One point I often emphasize is how political discussions can sometimes rely heavily on selective information or unverified claims, especially when audiences aren't encouraged to look deeper into the facts. In this clip, we're going to see Liz Truss in an interview with Pavlich on News Nation. The conversation touches on a range of political issues, and as it unfolds, there are several claims worth examining more closely. We'll go through the clip first, and then I'll break things down afterward by looking at publicly available data and Truss's record in office to provide additional context. The goal is to separate rhetoric from verifiable facts and give a clearer picture of what's being discussed. Let's get into it.
Thank you very much for being here. It's great to see you. There's a lot going on in the world. We know the special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. has lasted through many changes and many challenges, both globally and within our countries. But amid efforts to take out the Iranian threat, it seems that Prime Minister Keir Starmer, British Prime Minister, has created a pretty significant rift with the U.S. What do you think about the actions he's taken during this period of time, and why is he being so antagonistic?
Well, the fundamental issue Keir Starmer has is he is dithering over the strikes on Iran because he is trying to appease some of the sentiment in parts of the Muslim community in Britain. And he's been losing by-elections to the Green Party, who are even more Islamist in their approach. And he has been trying to play both sides, essentially. And what has happened is he's ended up in a position where Britain has not been acting with its most important ally. And we've also not been taking proactive action to deal with the Iranian regime. That isn't just a threat to America, it's a massive threat to Britain and Western Europe. So he is basically abrogating his national interest in favor of appeasing a particular group of voters, and I think that is appalling. And it reflects a wider part of the takeover of the British establishment.
Just to follow up on that, we've learned that the newly appointed Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, which we are not sure if he's even alive. We've heard that he's injured. We haven't seen him since his father was taken out by the Israelis. We know that he owns a significant amount of property in London. Is that part of the calculation of the British government at this point, that the Iranian regime literally owns massive parts of the capital city?
The British government has been far too close to the Iranian regime. We saw civil servants from the Foreign Office attending events at the Iranian embassy, celebratory events, essentially. We've seen the attitude taken by officials in our government, being pro or certainly not anti-Iran, not being willing to prescribe the IRGC, pushing very hard when President Biden was in power for a nuclear deal rather than putting on sanctions. It's more that the system itself has been infected with this particular worldview. It's an anti-Israel worldview. It's not pro-West worldview, and it is extremely concerning and worrying. I want to say, though, to the audience that this is not any way a reflection of what the average British person thinks. The average British person is pro-Israel, very concerned about the development of anti-Semitism, and also very pro the United States. So what we have is an elite in our country that does not reflect the position of the average British citizen.
Switching gears a little bit, it's somewhat in the same vein of topic, but earlier this week there were a number of Hatsala ambulances in the Golders Green neighborhood of London torched in an anti-Semitic arson attack. An IRGC group, proxy group, claimed credit for it. A local councillor called it not surprising. We're seeing these escalating attacks in the UK. We're also seeing them in the United States and all over Europe. One of the top signs of decaying societies is giving into this type of anti-Semitism. What is the response coming from current leadership, and is it adequate enough in the UK?
Well, all that is coming from Keir Starmer is words. But this is at the same time that he is appeasing extreme Islamists. So he's trying to introduce a definition of Islamophobia, so people can't criticize what's happening in our country, whether that's things like Sharia councils, whether it's things like the grooming gangs.
You wrote a book 2 years ago called 10 Years to Save the West. The clock is ticking on that. You warned about the corrosive effects of the global left. Setting aside the West as a whole, do you believe with the right leadership, the UK has a future and can be saved from the lack of leadership and bad partnerships, as you've described, that have been made by the likes of Keir Starmer?
I do believe it can be turned around. I have faith in the British people. They voted for Brexit. They voted for independence. They voted for sovereignty. They don't want what is happening to our country. What we need, though, is we need the kind of conservative infrastructure that you have in the United States. That's why I'm here at the CPAC conference, to look at how were these networks and institutions built. Switching gears a little bit, you were the last prime minister to meet with Queen Elizabeth before she passed away. A lot has happened since then. We wanted to ask you about what she may think of what has happened with her son, Andrew, and the issues that they've had with stripping his titles, and the way that has worked out since she passed on. Well, we still miss the late Queen. She was a monumental figure in our country, and 70 years on the throne, so she is greatly missed by the British people. I think the decisions taken around Andrew are the right decisions, but ultimately, we are a constitutional monarchy that has served us well for many years, and that's the way I think we should continue. And the thing about the Queen, and in my last meeting with her, even though she was very ill, she still wanted to stand up and greet me properly and do her duty. But she would always do what her duty was to the country. That was her priority, and I'm sure if she was still around now, that's exactly what she would do now. What is your view of King Charles' upcoming trip to the United States to meet with President Trump? Well, I think it's very good that he's visiting the United States of America. Obviously, 250 years since independence. On one hand, we're sad because that was the moment at which you guys decided to leave us. But on the other hand, it has been a huge success as a country. And I think it's only right that our monarch visits at this really important time for the US. Yeah, as a daughter of the American Revolution, I think we've been through some things, but we can also get over them. Finally, can't let you leave without asking about this. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are reportedly having financial issues in Los Angeles. There's been talk about them going back to the UK, but is there a path for them, given everything that has happened with the statements that they have made about the royal family, the dysfunction, to get back not just to England, but into the royal family? Well, that's really a matter for the King and the other members of the royal family. But as far as I'm concerned, you're very welcome to keep them in California. All right. Liz Truss, former Prime Minister of the United States.
Liz Truss remains one of the most debated political figures in recent UK history, largely due to the outcomes of her brief time in office. During her 45-day tenure, the shortest of any UK Prime Minister, her economic policies sparked significant turmoil. Her government proposed large-scale, unfunded tax cuts without detailed fiscal backing, which triggered instability in financial markets. As a result, the British pound dropped sharply, mortgage rates surged, and financial institutions, particularly pension funds, faced serious pressure. The Bank of England had to intervene with emergency measures to stabilize the situation, and even the International Monetary Fund issued a rare public warning urging policy reversal. Within weeks, major elements of her economic plan were rolled back. Her chancellor was replaced, and she ultimately resigned. Since leaving office, Truss has remained active in international media, including appearances in the United States, where she continues to comment on global political issues. However, her credibility is often questioned by critics who point to her record in office as a benchmark for evaluating her arguments. In the interview, several claims are made about public opinion and international policy. However, polling data in the UK often shows a more nuanced picture. For example, surveys have indicated significant public skepticism toward military involvement in foreign conflicts, along with broader concerns about economic impacts, such as rising energy costs. Public opinion on issues like Brexit has also evolved, with many polls suggesting that a portion of the population now views the decision differently than when it was first made. The broader takeaway from this discussion is the importance of verifying claims with reliable data and understanding how political narratives can differ from measurable public opinion. Moments like this highlight why it's essential to critically evaluate what's being said, rather than taking statements at face value.